This poem is about my grandfather, Albert Avena. He was born in Gloucester, Massachusetts. His parents came from Pico in the Azores. When he was a teenager, his father died out at sea. He was a fisherman, and Grandpa and his stepfather and mother moved to Santa Clara, California. St. Albert of Santa Clara. He wasn't a carpenter like Jesus' dad. His days were spent in the canning shed, the boards underfoot slick with juice, the air a cold cocktail of stinking fruit, leading the aproned women who cut the cots, sliced the peaches, and sorted the prunes, who sent them down the conveyor belt to the men who sealed them in the cans. His name wasn't Joseph, but Albert. He spoke Portuguese, not Aramaic. His children weren't born in a manger, and he may never have seen an angel, this workman in flannel and long johns about whom we don't know too much. No, Albert wasn't Jewish. Catholic, he joked that the roof would collapse if he dared to enter the church after years of dropping wife and kids at the door. Did he go back home and mow the lawn? Kick back with a beer in a Giants game? Did he park overlooking the Alviso Slough and remember his boyhood in Gloucester, his fisherman dad who died at sea, the stepdad who moved them to California? Or did he just sit in the Chevy smoking his pipe, shaking his head at the ladies' feathered hats and the men in their stretched-out Sunday suits? People called Albert a saint because he put up with Annie, his wife, who gossiped and complained and wanted. Quiet, he puffed on his pipe and did her bidding, tilling a new flower bed, building a shelf, or fetching linguiça to feed the family on Christmas Eve. Yes, dear, he'd say with a smile. Al never fled to Egypt, but he drove to San Diego once, only to learn, by telephone, not angels in a dream, that God had chosen his only son to suffer, not on a cross, but in a hospital bed. Paralyzed, nailed to the scratchy sheets, asking, why has God forsaken me? Haggard, suddenly old, Al and Annie drove through the rainy winter night. She wailed at his side, my son, while he steered them through the storm, then ran up the slippery hospital steps, gazed on his son's familiar face, and surrendered his life to care for him. In time, like Joseph, Albert suddenly fell ill and died. At his funeral, he finally re-entered the church. The steepled roof did not fall down. God had been saving him a place. St. Joseph reached out his hand. Come, my brother. Welcome home.
My name is Tyler Freitas, and this is The Muse. I hope she never abandons me while I'm asleep, groping for the switch to brighten the room, tides cleansing the sand, renewing the sea, fearful of the kraken, dragging to the dark doom, accompanying Ahab's harpoon through the beast, or beneath Walden Pond, among cries of geese. Never release me from your mellifluous grasp. Leave the chest with the old bones clasped. Savor the serenity of the chickadees and finches. No memorializing children with cold cement benches. A love that has grown beyond the first bundle of roses. A vulnerability, potential jealousy, surrender exposes. Dreams of children and sowing thoughts to flourish. We must embrace misery, never flee or abhor it.
Avocados by Elaine Avila. In America, time is money. In Kenya, time is relationship. We look at investments differently. Wangara Waiga Stone is quoted in Refuge by Terry Tempest Williams. When I was with my Vivu, looking at his avocado tree and the ocean, he counted 1, 2, 3. Trying to hold back fear, he counted 4, 5, 6. Breathing exercises his doctor gave him to keep his lungs 7, 8, 9 from closing in 10, 1, 2. Vivu, I said, teach me a Portuguese song. He could spread his lungs another way. He taught me the song of his childhood. I heard 90 years of his life in his voice, his earnestness as a young schoolboy, as armas, per la patria lutar. When I squeezed and wrung the lyrics into English, the Portuguese national anthem was all about getting young boys to fight the British for the right to colonize Africa, to oust the monarchy, which was soon replaced by fascism, the long arm of war reaching into my grandfather's island in the middle of the sea. But he'd come to California and planted this avocado tree.
Hola, my name is Marina Carreira, and I'll be reading from my book, Tantu Tantu. Telling another story. After the spark and deluge of last night, I open the window. I hang my sheet like a prayer flag. I tick the morning by, nails against mug. I remember how we met a little differently, both at opposite ends of an olive field, the Vaishu the Lua Shea, deliberately stepping toward one another, wind lasso at our waist. Upon meeting, you ask, "Where have you been?" I tell you, writing this life. You say, "This is the end of that, this is the beginning of this." And so, a new story, a bouquet of black-eyed poppies, the crossroad church at Ferry and Wilson, O Céu de Lisboa, the Andorinhas, a body on break at the table, a mind at rest without meds, a ball and chain of feathers and gems telling another story, a novo idioma, trust conjugated in the present and future indicative, a Bible in whale's tongue, two women holding hands, oração, two children joining them, familia. Capela de Nossa Senhora dos Aflitos. Here on this side of the ocean, dawn swirls its face on morning waves, the mist a mantle of woolen smoke around the cliff so many women have jumped from. I walk steadily to the old chapel Nazarenas praying for the return of their husbands, but I'm not here to pray. Just stand and bear witness to the crumbling blue and white tiles that form the Blessed Mother of the afflicted, the saint of those plagued by fear and famine, phantasms of the body and mind. No one knows I'm here to consider sanity, to imagine a world where illegal is not a person but an act, on an earth being swallowed by itself. To the kneeling tourists on my left, I am nothing more than an overwhelmed Americana who forgot her camera but doesn't care. It looks like rain is coming, and that is one less thing to wet. On that side of the ocean, you tell me about the sweltering heat of mid-afternoon Newark, New Jersey. It's murder out here. The sparrows stick to the cherry blossoms to stay cool, and we all know how they love to fly, so imagine.
Hello, my name is Michael Garcia Spring. And this poem is called Fado. With lost love, the Portuguese guitarist soaks in a bathtub on a rooftop, pours himself into another glass of vinho verde, then salutes twilight's last bawling goal in a sky heavy with clouds. Orange earth tones of rooftop tiles give way to the darkening blues of cobbled streets. The guitarist can hear cafe chairs scuffling, the alley below with laughter and voices and ice clanking in glasses. Garlic and salt rise into the belly of air. Octopus sizzles on the grill. The guitarist knows it's time to climb out of this bathwater and tune the strings. Tonight Severa will sing Fado. A moon will emerge from the haze of the Tagus River. And because of Fado, because it embraces fate and despair, the guitarist will sink into sound. He'll become the enchanted fisherman, once again casting his interpretation of nets and hooks into her songs. Thank you.
Hello, I am Sharon Coleman, and I am going to read a poem from my chapbook called Half Circle. And this is a poem that looks at my earthquake heritage. As a Californian, earthquakes have figured into my life forever, as it has for my grandmother and her parents and her great-grandparents. My grandmother, Genevieve Lavera, and her parents, Roy and Mary Lavera, experienced the 1906 San Francisco earthquake in West Oakland, across from the bay. And as my grandmother would love to say, you could read the newspaper in Oakland by the light of San Francisco burning. In any case, I've created a poem that is an ars poetica and integrates that experience into the experience of writing. Fault lines. On the fissures of a rock-bound earth, petrified words grind thirsty tongues. Lifelines crack in our corrupt hands. We sit and stare at falling shards in the midst of violent jolts and hollow out stillness. Sometimes we finger the grooves and scratches of rechanneled terrain. Sometimes we reach into the shattered stuff, both guards and looters of the aftermath. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Scott Edward Anderson. I'm reading from Dwelling, an eco poem. This is a poem called Savoring. Watch the birds grow full with bursting spring. Rapacious bees come from nowhere, covering themselves in pollen, until they are loaded with murky pastel. Humid, torpid, full with desire only to be laden, to be laid in humid dust. Take the pollen on your fingers, rub 2 fingers together, make an oil pastel of pollen, and rub it over your eyelids. Now go to your lover, your bee's knees, and close your eyes. Sun-drenched, the garden grows fecund in the naming earth. In a few days, the peonies will be 2 feet tall and laden with black ants, sucking the swelling bud. Sap runs and the garden grows green, then pink, blue, white, yellow, purple. Ochre pollen covers the porch deck and rail. Pollen does not discriminate, except flower to flower, sinus to sinus, as the trees give out their leafy life. This is called Longing, and there's an epigraph from Frank Bedart. Love is the distance between you and what you love. What you love is your fate. Longing. Desire is a city street, flush with longing. Losing is the darkness inhabiting the street. Say that losing becomes a way of knowing, words failing to capture its music. Desire is to longing as longing is to losing. If this is so, losing strengthens longing, as longing makes mystery of desire. Concave mirrors cascading light in common focus, each reflecting and magnifying the other, unformed, uninformed, but nevertheless. Life's little endings, the big, unresolved, unrequited unfolding of the world into what longing desires. This is called Mapping, and there's an epigraph from Elizabeth Bishop. More delicate than the historians are the map maker's colors. Mapping. A boundary is where something begins, spaces formed by locations. Mapping is building spaces and locations, as it is made. Nature's boundaries defined by interconnections and geophysical fact, not geopolitical friction. Aspect, climate, elevation, land forms and bodies of water, aggregation of species, watershed divides, soil, time, bedrock, strata, and shifting. Of this we are certain. Boundaries are always shifting. Only man tries to deny this, imposing order where chaos rules. Say that boundaries are the beginning, where things start, not the end point. Say boundaries are a beginning, one among many. Mapping delineates spaces and locations through form. Each boundary, while defining the end of shaped space, is also a beginning. This is called Running. There's an epigraph from Philip Johnson from the New York Times article on Frank Gehry from 1982. Not beauty or ugliness either, but a disturbing kind of satisfaction. Running. Think of a watershed as a river's neighborhood, the running stream a kind of architecture. Find the stream that forms the watershed in which you live. Hear the water running. If it is frozen, listen through the ice. The architect finds such harmony in the precise moment a corner is designed. Tension, productivity, and grace. Hear it? Running water, then silence, then water running. The architect Frank Gehry achieves a double sense of space. Like a watershed, his buildings are formed by what flows in and out. Follow the stream, run the watershed, chase the flash and glamour of fish scales underwater, spawning entire new dynamics of space. The way a storm moving through a valley redirects energy back into a stream. Gehry asked himself, why not do fish? A lasting design, form linked to function. So he did fish scale chairs, fish lamps, and then buildings that seemed to swim around their own corners, seemed to spawn. Scale the banks, river walls, river run, erosion and construction. Titanium trapezoids billowing at the end of Bilbao's streets, more like spun sugar than shaped metal. Run the river towards something. There's tension in productivity and grace. Perhaps this double sense of space is sense of place. No matter where we are always in a watershed. And finally, this is a poem called Wanting. And there's another epigraph on this poem. This is from Italo Calvino, from Baron in the Trees. If you put up a wall, think what's left outside. Wanting. We need a culture of different wants. By creating a second nature, do we separate ourselves from nature? Nature describes an idea derived from sensory experience. When you read nature, what do you see? The written text, a portable homeland. A poem is a tree as much as its paper. Make a poetry of landscape. Make it all about desire.